Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is, today we're going to talk about application portfolio management, how to start that journey. It's going to be very much more around, not so much around, the methodology. We're going to touch upon that, but we're also going to get into like how do I do this in the product, which is really key, right? To help everybody start with the adoption within their organization. So here's our safe harbor slide, right? The majority of the information that we're going to talk about today is already features and functionalities that exist within the product. We're not talking about things that we're planning for. There may be some talk of things that we're planning for in the future, which could change based upon business conditions. But for the most part, the information that we're presenting you today is features, functionality that's in the product already. Next. Hey, a couple of housekeeping items here real quick, and we'll kick right into this, right? Is that we're going to have everybody on mute for the presentation right now. And we're going to do this just to be able, we got a lot of content, be able to move that along. What you're going to notice is down within your toolbar, there will be a Q&A function that goes on, that's there. Please ask your questions there. They get logged, right? And we got a panelist of other individuals here that are experts that will be able to answer those questions that we go on. But if we get a backlog, we want to make sure we get to everybody, okay? Secondly, is that this session is going to be recorded. It will be available to everybody on the ServiceNow community after this session. And then we ask that, our feedback from our customers is very important to us. And I said, there's a very short survey after the session. If you could just stay on for, shouldn't take more than 45 seconds, right? If you can stay on to do that. Feedback that we got from the prior session was great. We incorporate that feedback in here, so we appreciate hearing from you. Next. So just as far as introduction goes, I'm Tony Pantaleo. I lead the product success team for SPM. I have some additional professionals on the webinar here today with me, on the workshop here with me. You're going to hear from Molly and also Luis. They will be answering some of the questions that come up in your chat. And if you're wondering what the product success team is, right? We work very, very closely with the product managers and the product team, right? And our job is we really focus on adoption of the product from our customers, right? So we focus a lot of our efforts on that. Your main subject matter expert today is going to be Mark Costeau. I'll turn it over to Mark to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everybody, Mark here. I've been with the product success group here for about 9 months. I've been at ServiceNow for going on 4 years. Started off as a member of the professional services team, helping customers like yourselves implement APM and the various other products under the strategic portfolio management group, such as Project, Agile, Safe, etc. And I have many years experience in the enterprise architecture and APM field prior to joining ServiceNow. And I'm here to help you with today. What we want to achieve is this workshop is designed to bootstrap a program. What is application portfolio management, and how can you get a minimum viable program off the ground with maybe some limited resources, but you can get started? We want to show you how you get value out of just those very initial steps, and then show you where your roadmap can go. As a part of the program here and a part of this series of workshops, today is about bootstrapping a program, getting that minimum viable going. But we're going to have follow-on sessions on advanced topics like measuring the portfolio, technology alignment, other sorts of things that come up as just as a part of doing APM. So a part of our what we're providing today, besides this workshop, we're providing a toolkit. It's up on the community. You see the URL there. We will be posting this URL to the community page. And just to kind of get with it, let me show you the site. here's our kind of homepage for our start your journey. And we'll be adding to this both after this workshop and over the next year or so. As we have more information or new material, we're going to enhance this. If you have questions, please, this is a great place. Maybe a week from now, you have a question that comes up. Find this page, look for just start your APM journey, and find this page, ask your questions here. I'll be monitoring this page. I'll be answering your questions. So, and a summary of what our toolkit, well, here's our agenda today. We want an overview of APM. We're going to review common service data model just very lightly, but it's the backbone of APM. So we can't talk about APM without talking about CSDM. How to realize value with APM in those early days and early stages. Then we go into hands-on, how to set it up and how to create an inventory using very simple tools. Then we talk about measuring the inventory. There's a capability within APM for scoring and indicators. And so one of the ways to improve something is to measure it. So we're going to talk about that, how to get off the ground with it. Then we'll touch on capabilities and demands and some stretch possibilities that are a part of the toolkit, such as incorporating APQC capabilities or capability set of your own design into and getting it loaded into ServiceNow and using demands to drive action. And then finally, we'll talk about what's next, what's in your roadmap, and where can you go. So to start things off, we got a quick poll. We would like to understand, where are you in your application portfolio practice? Are you just beginning, or do you have something going already using another tool? It gives us a good grounding about where our customer base is, and especially the members of this workshop today. We're going to give it another couple of minutes. Thank you for your responses. This really does help us do a better design for these workshops. Okay, another 15 seconds or so, and we'll move on. Okay, and then our next question is, if you do have a practice, where are you? Where are you in the maturity scale? And again, today we're designed this workshop for people who are just beginning and low maturity. But if you're not using ServiceNow APM, it doesn't necessarily mean you're low maturity. You can have a really robust practice built on SharePoint, for example. We've seen those sort of things. Oh, thank you all for responding. Got a few more coming in here. Okay, let's move on to our content. Thank you for your responses. So APM isn't new. And you know, APM is a practice. Frankly, it's been around since the 60s. As soon as those mainframes started coming up in the late 40s, the 50s, the 60s, especially in 60s, they became solid business tools. And first thing you had to do is start keeping track of what might be known today as applications. Um, each of those systems would do different things, and maybe it was just a report or it was collating some data or whatever it is. Those were applications, and IT had to take care of it. They had to know which one did what, who owns it, what is it doing, how do we invest in it. All of the things that we're talking about doing existed back in, you know, the early days of computing. The popularity of APM really grew in the 90s. As Y2K approached, one of the things that companies needed, they needed to understand where things were. Who owns this thing? Has it been checked for Y2K issues? All of those sort of things came along. And the tooling in response, the industry responded with new tools. APM enterprise architecture started moving from spreadsheets and static drawings into dynamic tools. In ServiceNow, we honestly we're a little bit late to the game, but we come in with what I believe, and having been in this for quite a while, it's a very unique approach. So application portfolio management today in ServiceNow consists of essentially these four key areas. There's that application list and the values around it, the under the various attributes. And we'll talk a little bit about what we mean by application, because that's a tricky word. But there's also the concept of the business. What does the business do? And how does this application align to it? How do underlying technologies align to that application? And then what information is used? And all of these things work together to build a stronger picture of what these systems, let's call them enterprise systems. What do these enterprise systems do? How are they constructed? How do they affect the business? Do we care? Do we really care? Do we have a risk because of something? All of these things come into play, and that's part of what APM is doing. So at the core of it, we have application portfolio management. It's got another view of this is we have the application portfolio and the ability to rationalize it, govern tools to help govern those application records. So that's the application portfolio part. Information portfolio allows you to construct that list of information objects at the logical level. What is the logical key data elements that this application is using? And then you can do things like associate these things back to risk or other regulatory type issues. Alignment of the business portfolio. Business capability is a key part of APM, and understanding how these enterprise systems are supporting your business. And then technology portfolio, think of it as from the bottom up. What is this thing constructed of? We also now, as a Tokyo, include an ability to define technology standards. So you can say, these are the technologies that you can build your applications out of, and they're approved for use within our enterprise. It's chaos avoidance. The key use cases for APM, you know, at the core, we see this application inventory. We have use cases, a key use case of just maintaining that data, forming the processes for intake of application information, maintaining it, make sure that it's certified and can be depended upon. Assess the health and value. That feeds back into rationalization and just general understanding of what's happening with your application inventory. Analyze the technology dependencies. That's that technology portfolio part where we understand what technologies are in use and what are the risks based off of manufacturer life cycles. So it's a software currency sort of play. Assess business capabilities at the business alignment. Also down at, and when I say at the bottom, we'll see when we talk about CSD and why I call it the bottom. At the bottom end, you go from this abstract concept of enterprise systems down into the CMDB, which represents the physical world. Here's the things that are really out there that are running that make this application operate. This allows us to do things such as aligning to ITSM activities, incident, problem, change, etc. We see that big picture end to end of how this inventory of enterprise systems is constructed, how healthy is it, how it aligns to the business at their highest conceptual levels, and then all the way into the operational level, we see how it's affected, how is it constructed, what's happening. APM itself, I like to think of it as maybe connective tissue. It sits in the middle, but it ties so many things together. In and of itself, it's rather simple, but it's bringing all of these different capabilities within the ServiceNow platform together in one place to give you incredible visibility. IT asset management, we use that to find our technology list. And basically from there, you have an understanding of this enterprise systems using this technologies. These technologies have these entitlements, licensing, deployments, etc. It's tying in asset management. The financial management, able to calculate TCO. Tie-ins, this is very important and dear to our hearts in our group. DPM, I should really change this to SPM. Your strategic portfolio, the strategic planning. This is where we tie into demands and the requests, the business case to do things, and the execution, be it project or agile execution. Then ITSM, incident, problem, change, contract, vendor, all of these things are part of the visibility that are tied into business applications and the APM. GRC, the risks, integrated risk management, audits, scoping, risks, all of those sort of things. PA reporting, of course, that's just platform. And then ITOM, that's that physical representation in the CMDB of what's in your data centers, in your cloud, and it's actually running to make these applications happen. And then finally, more of the platform things we utilize, things like data certifications, assessments, service catalogs, surveys. All of these things are brought together within APM, perhaps more so than any of our other of our products. It's very much a symbiotic product. The big picture of what APM is doing. This is a really busy graphic, but if you think about it in terms of, what do? We're delivering, in the end, we're delivering products in some form. We'll call them digital products to our customers. We're delivering value. These digital products may include things written in code. It may become services. There's all kinds of forms of things that are being delivered to our customers. Things that begin are requests, demands, ideas, customers' needs, and then the formulation of our strategy. This all comes together in our demand pipeline. Continuous planning takes the strategic roadmap and ideas, combines it with the requested needs, and formulates activities. We decide to build things. However you build it, It's up to you. We support visibility into practically all forms of it. Then we deliver these things. While these things are running, we understand risk, security, audits, defects coming back. It becomes this loop. And then here we are, our good friend, application portfolio management, bringing all of these concepts together. If you think about the prior picture, this brings it together, feeds it back into the demand pipeline, along with the strategic roadmap, and around we go again. It's the end-to-end support. I call it the software factory. Common services data model. Without the common services data model, it was discovered several years ago, there was trouble linking all of our products together, even though they're on the same platform. The common services data model came about. When it comes to APM, this area, everything here in the design area is APM. Business application, business capability, information object. We also kind of take a little bit of piece of the application service. Application service is a special case. It belongs to everybody. As you can see, it's right here in the middle, tying the consumption side together with the operation side down here in the orange. And then the build side is also kind of incorporated. These SDLC components are artifacts being developed and deployed into an application service on, you could say, maybe on behalf of a particular business application. Key thing to remember here, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in a moment, application service is a deployment of a business application. This is a core tenet of CSDM. Now, we'll have more programs and sessions on CSDM. I do want to go into a little bit about our definitions. There's a couple of key definitions we need to have. Application. It's a horrible word. We got application, business application service. Which application is which? What does it do? So in our model, in the CSDM model, application is discoverable. It's electronically detectable. It's an installation of software running on some sort of system. Now, it could be in a container, a Docker, or something of that sort. It could be installed on a server, whatever. It's software running to perform a particular function. It is in tables within the CMDB derived from what we call the application table, CI/APPL. But the key thing here, it's an operational CI. Next, I'm going to go skip over the middle. I'm going to go to application service. Application service is a deployment of things work together, infrastructure working together to be an single instance or deployment of an enterprise system. An application service could also be a child of a parent application service. So there might be a particular stack for, say, an API. There are modeling techniques that we can talk about in an advanced course on this. But the idea is an application service consists of, guess what? Applications. So one or more applications working together, running on their servers, databases operating, middleware, et cetera, working together, packaged together, if you will, are an application service. An application service is a deployment or an instance of a business application. So an example, very, very simple example. We have a business capability. By the way, business capability is what your enterprise does. You create a model of capabilities to express all of the different things you do. We align our application so that we know that this business capability is dependent upon and provided by is the term we use, a particular application. So here we have email and collaboration. It's provided by Exchange as my business application. I've got a production deployment and it's dependent upon an application instance, Exchange instance running on this server, and a SQL server is being used. There's a dependency there. This Exchange is using the SQL server and it's deployed. They all go together and make up the application service. This is one of your simplest models. Another one that will come up often, what do we do about SaaS? SaaS doesn't have any infrastructure. What do we still need? And there's a few concepts that are shown in here, but again, we start with, and we're using Workday as our example. Workday is what we use here at ServiceNow for our HR management, employee information, vacations, that sort of thing. So employee management is the capability supported. We have the business application Workday, and then we have a production deployment. Notice that it has no infrastructure under it. It does have a technical service and technical service offering. Those are for another day, discussion of CSDM. Basically, think of this as the teams that own and provide Workday to the organization so it can be used. We have this list would actually be hundreds over here on the other side that depend upon the data from Workday. So we have this data dependency. This is why we create an application service for a SaaS application. We create a business application so that we understand it at the high level, the design and strategic level. We create the application service to represent the production instance. And if we had a dev and a UAT, I might also represent those as well. So getting value out of the application portfolio management. The tenet here is, and this goes back to that initial page where APM, where it came from in the 60s, just understanding and having a reliable single list that is well maintained, that is a list of your enterprise systems or business applications, a degree of classification and who owns them, that in and of itself is valuable. If you don't have that as a part of IT, you're running around trying to figure out who owns this. And you have to go to siloed spreadsheets all over the place, try to figure out what's going on. I saw lots of people in the late 90s doing exactly that. They couldn't figure out who owns what and what's going to happen if we turn it off or if we change it. So part of establishing that, you establish the process for intake, maintenance, retirement of the records. The records represent those enterprise systems. Establish a simple program to measure the inventory against, and somewhat arbitrarily, I picked business value and technical risk to include in the toolkit. It wasn't arbitrary, it was intentional, because one of the most popular evaluation tools out there for many years has been Gartner's time model. It's a way of evaluating, tolerate, invest, maintain, eliminate. It's an evaluation, and you're evaluating by business value versus technical risk. Stuff with high business value and low technical risk, you want to invest in. It's good stuff, perhaps. And I say perhaps because there's always caveats. But something that has no business value and extreme technical risk, that's got to be on your naughty list. You're going to look at getting rid of it. You utilize these records, just this much gives you enough to begin a simple rationalization program. You eliminate 1, 2, 3 business applications from your inventory, those savings pay back for your program just in 1 year, in one rationalized application. So kind of a step by step is how you might do this. You establish your inventory. So it may not be all of your applications, it might be a subset. You include ownership because it really is important to understand who owns these systems. That can be difficult and it might be an organizational change, but it is incredibly important. You got to have somebody to go to. Add any in, if you have other attributes that you can gather, every attribute that you add, it adds value. It gives you something more to slice and dice by. And then I say here, this is just for everybody gets this presentation, and it says see toolkit for the import template. We'll take a look at that in a moment. So assess business value and technical risk. We're actually, it says see the toolkit here, but we're actually, and the toolkit does contain how to set up those assessments, but we're going to take a look at it as well as a part of the workshop today. Once you've established an inventory, even if it's not complete, if it's enough, you can use categorization, that classification, and the business value versus technical to identify rationalization or retirement candidates, merge candidates, whatever it is you're going to do through the rationalization evaluation. And then using demand, which is a part of APM, you get demand as a part of it. You can essentially write a business case to move this forward. Another, just a little more detail on this, the approach is establish, and I don't want to read every bit of this. This is for you to read and use as a guide, but it includes an approach. Just establish a partial inventory. Perfect is the enemy of good. Get something that's good enough and get started. There's two approaches. There's vertical, go deep and get a subset of applications, or go wide, but only get a narrow subset of attributes, 4 or 5 attributes. Both of them work. For example, you might only bring in your crown jewel or your high value applications to begin with. Make sure that they're categorized. That's really important as far as rationalization. And categorization in APM, what we're really doing is defining the technical capability or technical function. You want to know this is a BI tool, and that one is a general ledger tool, and that one is customer relationship management. If you classify just at those kind of high levels, it gives you a way to subdivide the inventory and start to look at things from, I have 10 things that are BI tools. Can I reduce it to 5? Define the business value and technical risk. That gives you something more to, once you said, okay, I've got 10 BI tools, what's the health of them? What's the technical risk? What's the business value? It becomes another way to do the evaluation. In your steps, you set up your inventory, you run your assessments and create the indicators, and then you go and evaluate. Getting value is you have the value proposition, if you will. You have a managed single source of record of inventory, ability for business, IT ops, and others to know who owns whatever it is, whatever enterprise system it is. You have a foundation for strategic planning, with technical function as category, basic rationalization as possible. And it becomes a foundation for IT operations and alignment, that deeper level we were looking at back in the CSDM discussion. And then a foundation, also a part of that, foundation for technical alignments. And then finally, demands are a way to express a business case. How you execute, multiple ways. We've got great tools with ServiceNow to support execution, but also there's many other tools out there. Everybody probably has their own tool set. So I want to talk a little bit about the toolkit. We've talked about what is APM. How are you going to get value out of it in an initial deployment? This is a beginner's. There's plenty of other value. It continues to grow. But getting started, what are we providing for you? So we provide a set of documents and recordings. What we've done is gone and made recordings of actually doing these various things. So in the APM toolkit, we tell you how to activate it. We get a video that shows you how to install APM, set up an initial, at least a minimum of one group for the APM analyst role, and then how to use, we provide a template for populating this business app import template. We provide it, we talk about how you can populate it, and then we provide you a video and a guide on how to do that import. Then we have a discussion on how to configure the business value and technical risk assessments, and we include some suggested questions. The out-of-the-box assessments don't really have anything. They're not completely empty, but they just have a placeholder question. This shows you how to add your questions, and it gives you some suggestions, and then how to run it and gather the indicator values, how to get you to that rationalization point. Next, we have business capability imports. This is kind of a stretch goal, but we show you how to take business capabilities from one source or another. In particular, we call out how to do this with the most popular one I know of, APQC. And then we give you an import example template. So getting set up. Basic steps are install a plugin, create one group, and here we're for a minimum viable implementation. We're saying use APM Analyst. That's the highest level user in APM. You can do everything APM and then import your inventory. So our video here will demonstrate how to enable. So you log in, I'm logging into a Tokyo instance. And I need to be system administrator or equivalent. I go to plugins. And I look for application portfolio management. And I look for the one that's kind of colored. It actually packages up several things, the ATF tests and others. And I select it to install, as you see here in the video. And you launch it. If you're installing in a sub-prod instance, which we recommend that you do start in sub-prod, load the demo data. It'll help you understand how APM works. If you're in production, please do not load the demo data. And then we install. Now, actual installation on my systems takes 20 to 30 minutes. Great time to go get lunch, grab a cup of coffee. With our video here, we skip all of that. You can tell it to continue in the background, as you see in the button there. Once it's installed, you're now ready to do the next step, which is to go and create that APM analyst group. There are other roles within APM, and we'll be covering those in future workshops. But to get started with this minimum viable program, we recommend just create a APM, master group that has all privileges. That way you can work with it as an individual or a small number of people. Again, we want to get you started. So we created the group, we add the role, we're going to look for SN_APM.APM analyst. Pick it, assign it, and then finally, you have to add some people to the group. So you would add maybe yourself, or if you have an admin doing this for you, you would have them add you and whoever else is going to be working with it. And then finally, a quick test with one of the users that you've added to the group to make sure that they see APM. And here we brought up APM home just to show that, yes, we got it. So the next step, we've got APM installed, we've got a group created, we want to bring in some data. So using the template that's provided in the toolkit or your own template, you can use other spreadsheets. What we're going to do is use the list view right-click import capability. And here for a minimum viable load, we've got a name, description, category, IT application owner, business owner, and status. And that's all we're going to bring in. We right-click, say import. As you see from here, import would let me generate a template if I wanted. I'm creating new elements, so I want to do an insert. I go pick my loaded spreadsheet, and then I tell it to upload. What will happen after upload is we'll get a page where you could go and review each record. It's going to ask you to do the review after it's done the upload. So you do this preview, and at the bottom of the preview, so it just shows records 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You complete the import and it will create the applications. There you are. Now in this case we only did 2, but imagine you did 100 or 300 or 500. You've got an application inventory ready to go. So you can now start towards your next steps. So once you've established that inventory, the way you improve anything is you measure it first so that you can understand that you've improved things. So measuring the inventory, ServiceNow has a prescriptive rationalization process. Identify, that's that load the applications. Measure, that's what we're going to be talking about doing here. Once you've measured, you start to evaluate using the various tools, and we'll bring up a demo system here in a moment and look at rationalization. Then once you've evaluated, you make decisions and take action. You create demands to represent the business cases to drive those actions. The mechanism that we use for measuring is the indicator and scoring framework. Indicators are, think of them as metrics. They're metrics and they're separate from performance analytics for a reason, to make it more flexible. The metrics can capture, or our indicators capture metrics about the application inventory. They also work against capabilities. We support both. But in this case, we're talking about business applications. So we have their indicators. The indicators are rolled up, summed up. Each indicator gets a score. Those scores are weighted and then added into a scoring profile, and you get the weighted average as a score. It's a way to give you an apples to apples scoring of your system, so that when you're looking across categories, you're looking at various systems, you can be relatively confident that you've got a score that is meaningful between the two. Some of the key parts of the measure or of this indicator framework, we have indicators, those are the metrics. Data sources, we'll look at what data sources are possible but we can cover just about anything as far as data sources. How often? Some things you only evaluate maybe once or twice a year. Some things you may evaluate every single month. Just depends upon what kind of indicator it is. The application scoring profile that derives that single score. Remember, you also have the indicator scores. All of them play a part in our rationalization. There are 12 out of the box indicators in the APM application. The data sources available are assessments. That's what we're going to look at in detail today. You basically have a survey. You can send those surveys out to particular constituents. For today, we're going to send them to the application IT owner, but it could be the business owner. It could be some other group that does the evaluation. The assessments can do anything you would imagine with assessments. It's really wide open and powerful, and subjective evaluation is an important part of understanding how people think of a particular enterprise system. It's, there are operational, in another workshop, we'll talk about operational indicators, but the subjective ones with these assessments is important as well. That's kind of the key point. Performance analytics is another source. Custom scripts, with custom scripts, we can get to anything in the platform. Query condition is just simply evaluating against a value on the business application table. And then we can have an indicators data source, which will use a set of other indicators to create a single score. So for example, you might have a set of indicators that is for incidents, problems, and change, and then have a final indicator, which is operational indicator. And it rolls up or sums up all of the incidents, problems, and change. That's actually one of the out-of-the-box ones. So this is just talking about scoring profile. You have the various indicators. They all are added to a scoring profile with a weighting. Their scores are taken and essentially the percentage of the indicator in the scoring profile, we multiply the indicator score and we just add it to the profile score. The end game is getting to this. And here's where I want to drop out and talk about the tooling that we have. So this is a Tokyo instance here. Once I have my applications loaded and I've got something to measure by, I can use the analyze capability. First page of this, I see everything, the application portfolio divided up by categories. Out of the box, we support category and application family. Another day, we will talk about what app family is, but you can also configure the system to add other things to subdivide your inventory. Category is really nice. If we look at it from the concept, these represent technical function, business intelligent reports, ETL, contracts, finance, human capital management. So here I see human capital management. I've got 7 apps doing the same thing. One's cloud, 2 are homegrown, and I see various, by the way, I can adjust what I want to see here to help me decide, but maybe I want to take a look at this. Also, I can filter what I'm seeing here. I drill into this and I look at it from my technical risk versus business value score, and then sizing by business value, because that's the 2 values I have from our minimum viable program. I'm looking at what is essentially a Gartner time model. The bad things are down here in the lower left, the good things are up here in the upper right. But I get that evaluation, a quick evaluation of what's going on. Am I interested in this? Do I want to take some sort of action? I can see the actuals over here. Again, this is a configurable list. The this by that, the X by Y and bubble size, again, this is configurable. So as you mature, you can start to do more with these things. There's quite a few out of the box capabilities in here configured, which it is designed to be configured as a part of it. And again, we'll have a future workshop on how to do this. Back to our presentation. So now what we want to do is we want to look at how do we set up the business value technical risk assessments around it. This is a quick summary video. Again, starting off in our system, Tokyo system. To make it easy, you have to change scope. This is something you can find more details about scope on the developer site and community site. It just basically lets us work directly on some of the application portfolio stuff that we're working with, particularly the indicators. What we're going to do is update the out-of-the-box assessments. And here, what I'm doing is I'm going to the business application indicator. This is the list of indicators, by the way. So I drill into the business value indicator. I see this data sources assessment is set up to be done on a quarterly basis. And I open the assessment metric category. Assessments in ServiceNow are called metric types. They have metric categories and the questions are metrics. So what we're doing is we're going to the business value category and we're going to add a couple of new questions. You see, we've got 2 down there already. We go to, this is showing going to the toolkit where we have some recommendations for questions that you might ask. And of course, please do make up your own questions to ask regarding business value or whatever assessment you're creating. These are just some examples to get you started. And so we enter the name, we enter the question, that's what's going to be presented. I set the order, I already had 2, so I set the order to 300. The template is important. We want to use a 1 to 10 scale. So we use a template that's called the Net Promoter or NPS. That gives us that 1 to 10. And we'll see an example of that in a moment. And I was fixing the name there because it still had a bullet in it. So now we go back to our indicators. We've configured our assessment. It's time to run the assessment. Let's send it out to people. From the indicator, there's a button, Generate Assessments. Here we can configure which applications we want to assess. In this case, I'm picking it by IT owner and picking Able Tutor as the IT owner. In a real world case, you would probably do it for all of your applications. Who gets the assessment? Here we're doing it by user field, and I'm going to pick the IT application owner. And then I click Send Assessments. This is going to generate the assessments, and the users will see their assessments in the self-service section. And if you have it exposed on your service portal, they would see assessments on service portal as well. Here I'm impersonating Able Tutor. Able's going to go to the nav menu and locate assessments and surveys. Here we see the assessment takes it. Notice that the assessment is divided up for each application that Able owns. And so he goes in and fills it in for each application. So it's pretty efficient. Rather than one survey per application, it's done at the IT owner level, and he assesses all of the ones that he has. He's completed it, and now we go back to our indicator. So the assessment itself is the data source. It's a source of data we want to evaluate. Now we need to generate the indicator scores. So we're going back to indicators. Now I'm doing this from the profile. We see that we have business value and pretend that we had already done technical risk. I just say regenerate scores. I give it a physical period. I'm doing it for all of FY22. And it launches. You give it a moment to complete. On a real system, I would give it an hour or two. And then we go and we can confirm that we've got values. So here are the indicator values. ServiceNow APM was one of them. And also we have a application score available. So that's a quick overview of how to get that set up. So summary of your steps there that we went through: configure your questions on the assessments, business value, technical risk. We suggest these as something for a starter. There are several others, including business fit, customer sat. Feel free to have at them and configure them. The techniques are the same. Generate the assessments and send it out to your recipients. You can monitor from the indicator, you can monitor the instance of the assessment and know when it's complete. Once they're all complete, generate the indicator scores. And video demonstration is available as part of the toolkit. Our next subject is taking it up a level. So what we've just discussed will give you an inventory with ownership, classification, and some assessments, subjective assessments, by which you could begin rationalization. A next stretch goal for a minimal viable implementation would be next, go into business capabilities. Business capabilities by CSDM definition is the ability of an organization to do its business activity and fulfill its goals. Business capability mapping establishes the support, the provisioning. So business capabilities are what your enterprise does. Business applications is the IT tooling, the enterprise systems that supported business process, which we're not addressing today. Again, a future workshop. Business process is how you do it. So business process use these enterprise systems to achieve and provide the business capabilities is one way of looking at it. So capability planning, this is just a quick screenshot. Here in a moment, we'll go and take a look at the real thing. But the capability map provides you a view of the hierarchy. Traditionally, capabilities are in hierarchies. I usually recommend, over the years, have recommended that customers stick to about 3 levels. You can go as deep as 6 in the product. This screen supports up to 6 layers, and it's just more difficult to manage the more layers you have. I have seen customers start with a single level, just a list of 10 very high level capabilities, and they did their association at that layer. And then the next year they added another layer, and move the association to the second, more detailed layer. And they evolved over time. It's a great approach. Not the only approach. One of the most popular ways that people will start with their capability model is going to APQC. APQC is a nonprofit organization that specializes in advising various industries on a industry process, giving standardized industry process. They also include a cross-industry, just standard set of processes. The top three layers of these process models, the PCF they call it, make great capabilities. They're expressed in a manner, for example, the top layer: develop vision and strategy, develop, manage products and services, market and sell products and services. These are the kinds of things that we all do. All of our companies do these things. You break it down a little bit further, and the idea is we understand what our business is doing, what systems are supporting that. That's an incredibly powerful bit of visibility to know that these systems are supporting this critical business capability, and we're having problems in delivering this capability. We need to go look at these systems. Yet another form of rationalization and understanding. Let's take a look at it for real for just a moment. Back to our system. You'll notice that APM Home kind of gives you a launch pad for everything APM. There's other ways to get to this. I just use this because it's quite convenient. So one of the things we see, we talked about the indicator and scoring framework. We see scores over here. Capabilities can be scored. Traditionally, capabilities are scored by people, process, and technology. That's the evaluations we do. And in our toolkit, we provide some questions for capabilities as well. So here we see, since it's in a hierarchy, there's lots of ways of visualizing hierarchies. In this particular instance, we have a way to expand the hierarchy. As you click on a particular capability, over here we can see what business application, and this one unfortunately doesn't have business. Let me find one that does. I can see the business applications directly associated. If I click on a higher level one, I can see the indirect ones. That would be the children that are rolling up to this capability. Capabilities are measured at the leaf levels. That's these lowest levels in the hierarchy. So we do our evaluations or assessments and scoring there. Those scores roll up the tree, if you will. We can see details, people, process, technology, scoring, project investments. You can associate demands, projects against capabilities. There's more features coming in the future to enhance what we can do. Association of capabilities to goals and strategy. This is a growing thing as part of the SPM APW. And you'll hear more about that in other sessions. So we view this by here's our capability, here's our evaluation. One thing that we're not touching on today, but we will in another session, will be technology portfolio. Here's that association of technologies to the business applications. You see the risk here. These risks also roll up through the application service, through the business application to the capability. And we can look at it by technology risk. And the red ones here are showing risks. The gray ones probably have not been evaluated. From here, we can also manage our capability hierarchy. So once you've loaded, usually we'll load via spreadsheet, but once you've loaded your capabilities, you manage that hierarchy using something like this. It makes it easier to see it. So if I want to add a new child under this, I can easily do so from here. Add a capability, I can edit this capability. So before I move on, it kind of jumped forward on me. I want to talk about demand. So another, maybe a stretch goal, I think a highly valuable and unique part of ServiceNow's APM is I've done my rationalization. I looked at some capabilities and I've got a problem with the capability and I want to improve the applications that support it. How do I do this? How do I start something? I use a demand. A demand is the ability to generate a business case. Demands in ServiceNow, and there's plenty of content on the community. Also, we'll be having follow-on sessions to talk about it. But demand in ServiceNow and APM side of it, we can define what kind of activity is it. We're improving usability. We're retiring an application. We give it a name, we define kind of what we think it is. Is it strategic and it needs a project, or is it a operational and it needs just a change? We give it dates, departmental ownership. We can define a manager or part of the demand process might do that. And then we identify the affected capabilities and or business applications. This ties this business case to the application. Once, as a IT owner, as an enterprise architect, as some interested constituent, I can look at what's going on with a particular application from the roadmap view. This is but one way to do it. There's also APW, again, it's been mentioned, Alignment Planner Workspace. We've got a session coming up December 7th, and we'd love to see you all there as well. So this view here, application roadmap, this shows me all the projects, demands, what business unit, what department, priority, etc., so I can see and understand what's going on with my application. So that's our minimum viable with the stretch goal of demands and business applications. Where do you go next? So one area that helps you in setup and maintaining and running your APM is guided setup. Guided setup does not have to be completed to start, but it's a one-stop shop for everything that you might need to configure in APM. I'd recommend taking a look at it. It kind of, as it says, guided setup. It guides you through the various parts of APM. This is something that we'll probably have an office hour on later next year, just to discuss what you can do with guided setup in APM. So application portfolio management, we talked about the rationalization maturity model. There is a general application process or steps of maturity, crawl, walk, run, if you will. We call it the fitness levels. Level one, establish that basic inventory, establish the process of being able to maintain it, certify it, intake for new applications, who enters it, who's responsible. IT focus understanding, so consolidating, this is again that ownership and start to align it to operations down through the application service and connecting to the infrastructure that supports it. Aligning to the business, we just talked about business capabilities and demand. and being able to understand how these systems support what the business does. Proactively managing the portfolio, rationalization, and the various tools that we provide to be able to measure that application inventory. And then finally, top level, integrating the technology and business function and understanding end to end from the abstract to the physical, what the applications are doing, what these enterprises are doing. So this is more for your consumption. I don't want to read all of these to you, but here are a set of KPIs that you might consider for measuring the success of your program. Of course, this is just a starter list. Add to it, add your own indicators and metrics. And then finally, we have a roadmap. This is just a recommendation. It's a proposal, if you will. It's not written in stone. Some customers may begin very early on with something that is identified to be further out. But the key things are the inventory and security. That's, who does what. Business capabilities, you see that starts early in phase one. CSDM alignment, that starts day one. Assess and define, start doing those assessments early, establish that process. When you start a new APM program, one of the biggest things, the biggest challenges is organizational change. Being able to take these new things that people have to do and they say, oh, you're just giving me more work, because they don't understand why. You got to get over that and get your people over it so that you establish a good process. And then alignment. So you've established the inventory. Late phase one, begin the alignment to ITSM and demand activities. ITSM requires that alignment, and those indicators requires the application service level. Again, we're going to have workshops on operational indicators and how to build them and what your possibilities are. Align to the technologies, again, requires that application service. How does TPM work? We're going to have a workshop on that as well. Introduce TCO. So the current TCO capabilities in ServiceNow are kind of on pause. There's new functionality coming. So here's one of those safe harbor statements. We have new APM functionality and capabilities coming that will be incorporated. Traditionally, and I've been doing this for a lot of years, getting that total cost of ownership and the costs in is pretty hard. So we kind of put it out in the late phases. But if you have the information, you could do it first thing. Again, this is just a guideline, something to think about. And then finally, enterprise artifacts. Part of the Tokyo release, we can attach artifacts. Part of the EA, enterprise architecture function, is to derive various artifacts and you associate them with the enterprise systems, lucid charting so that you can draw those diagrams, and ability to manage the artifacts and versions. That finishes our presentation. I do want to leave you with a request and a consideration. We're always looking for evangelists for the Strategic Portfolio Management Group. If you're interested, again, you'll have this particular presentation. Reach out to us. We would love to have you as a part of our evangelist program. So now we have 12 minutes. Questions, anything that we can help you with.
Hey, Mark, so I captured a couple of questions that may or may not have been answered with inside the chat, but I think it's worthwhile to be able to share that with everybody, and everybody that's on the workshop here. If you have something specific, please put it into the Q&A and we'll share it with everybody here. So here, Mark, here's the first one. Ready? All right.
Yep.
All right. So you talked about indicators, right? And you gave a couple of examples are there, right? But maybe you can expand on that a little bit. And what are some of the other critical indicators that should be addressed when you're using APM, specifically around kind of like app inventory and app rationalization?
So the indicators, as we were talking about it, to me, it's one of the a really brilliant part of it, and it's a differentiator. The other competitors, I don't think, have a good system for doing this. We've built in measures. So other types of indicators, we've talked about a couple of the subjective ones. There's customer satisfaction, technical fit. Those are fine. But the gold, if you will, are getting down into operational indicators. In the CSDM part of the discussion, we showed how you tied to the application service. Application service brings together the infrastructure that is driving or running that application. And guess what else? By CSDM prescription, application services are identified as a part of incident, problem, and change in many cases, maybe not all cases, but it's been a ServiceNow recommendation for quite a while to be able to identify those, which application service is it that's down or you can't log into, or it's slow, or whatever is going on, or we have a change and we're upgrading the servers, and guess what? They affect this application service. Counting those events, the number of incidents, the number of problems, incidents that were P1 incidents became a problem, the changes. So a lot of changes in a traditional application, that's maybe bad. In a modern application with a CI/CD pipeline, a lot of changes are a happy thing. What you want to look at instead is successful changes, changes that didn't generate any post change incidents. That's the kind of things that you look at. You bring that measure into it, and not only have you incorporated the opinions of people, the subjective view, you've incorporated and rolled up that objective view of here's how healthy this thing is. It's got problems. And so the indicator framework, because of its flexibility, can encompass all kinds of concepts. You could go after technical risk based off of GRC related stuff if you have GRC and APM. You could go off of vulnerability if you have vulnerability management. The possibilities are really limitless.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. Here's another one that we noticed in the chat earlier on was, is there a common or standard list of business capabilities? And I'm throwing this in there. It might even be like, are they the same across industries? Are they different? Maybe you can expand on that a little.
So they are the common one, again, APQC that we were talking about. That's where for many years now, I've been directing people. These guys they're all about process, but again, the top three layers express nice capabilities. This is a great common set. They have a cross industry, basically any industry, but they have very specific industry silo versions for, aerospace, health, all the variations of healthcare, financial institutions. This APQC is well worth a look when you go to start planning. And you might start with just this top level. That's a pretty powerful statement right there, just to be able to do these 13. The document that I was referring to in the toolkit tells you how to go. Yeah, it's free. You can create a login in APQC, and it tells you how to locate and download the Excel spreadsheet that represents their capability model. And then here's the URL for it, www.apqc.org, PCF.
Great. There you go. This one I put in the chat just recently. Here we go. is that if a client wants unit-based pricing for a business, for one or several business applications, will that require the upcoming feature related to TCO to get costs related on the CI level, and then have the ability to aggregate that up to the business unit or business application?
Yes, there's a lot, TCO can get really complicated, especially if you're going to start gathering costs of the various subsystems, if you will, gathering all of your server costs and all of the partial software installation costs. We are working on new TCO capabilities that are looking to do exactly that kind of thing. And what I'm hearing is we have a simple model where if you have the information, you can just load it and incorporate it. Then there's a more complex model that we're looking at where we can utilize our integration with IT asset management, strategic portfolio management, the demand project, agile and safe execution, those models, incorporating all of those costs. It's going to be a big lift to get it built, but that is where our thinking is right now.
And Mark, maybe just how important, so I've heard a lot about this in the past, and those questions come up, right? So how important is it? You mentioned a simple model, a complex, like where's the middle ground there, right? Do I need to be precise down to the nickel and dime, or, when is there just too much Kentucky windage to where, it's not reliable?
You want to be reliable at being strictly very focused on APM. I want to use those costs for rationalization. If I've got two applications that are in my mind, I could get rid of either one of them, but I need one or the other. One of the things I'm going to look at is what is the cost. Now that's not the only thing I look at, but cost can become a big factor. It's really nice to know when you go and do your burn down reporting. Here's the applications that we plan to retire this year, and you have that cost, some kind of a thumb in the air is what you start with. The more accurate it is, the better your evaluation. Does it have to be down to the penny accurate? I don't think so, not for an APM practice. But the better your data, if you're using some of these systems that gather that kind of information and you have that information in an external system and you can just import it, that's what this simple model that we're talking about will be, where we're gathering it from ServiceNow and asset management and strategic portfolio management and those kind of costs. That will be a bigger and different story. That's really kind of replicating what some of these external systems will do. But the short is you don't want it to be just completely thumb in there, but you want to have something better than order of magnitude, I guess, is the short of it. And its uses are, it's really valuable as a part of your understanding and visibility.
Okay. And so I saw this question come up a couple of times, so I'm sure it's probably in a few other folks' mind that's here in the workshop, right? So what's the difference between SPM and APM?
Okay. Strategic portfolio management, for one thing, we used to be called IT business management, ITBM. And everybody that's known us for a while, that's what you probably still call us, as ITBM. IT business management encompasses not only the strategic plan, and the reason we renamed is because we're not just for IT. We can do a really good job at demand and execution management with the tool set that we've got. But especially it all starts with idea and demand, this idea of intake and building the business case and actually having visibility to everything that's going on. Application portfolio management is more of an enterprise architecture and IT function where you're managing these systems. But guess what? If you think about IT and the projects in IT, what is IT doing? If you go upgrade a bunch of servers, or you have a project to move a data center, you are affecting your enterprise system. So APM is very closely linked to it. That's why it's part of that particular product group here at ServiceNow. But strategic portfolio management is what it sounds. It's the starting at the strategic level and being able to manage your investments and work all the way down to the point of change even, and having that visibility as to what it is that you're actually working on. Again, it does not have to be all IT. It certainly is well adapted to IT, but it can be products, and products could be anything. Products could be the services that you offer your customer. We can give you that kind of visibility. You can model your products. And then with features like our customer service management, field service management, employee workflows, all of these things can be tied back into what you're doing in the strategy of your company to make it run better and improve the capabilities that you deliver.
Hey, Mark, that was, thanks. Your timing's impeccable here. Last breath taken right there at the bottom of the hour here.
Yes. Thank you, Tony. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. There will be more. Let us know what you want to see.
Thank you, everybody, for showing. And please go to the SPM event sites. We're going to have more of these workshops coming up in 1Q and throughout next year. Thank you very much.